Well, hey, everybody, welcome to Stewardship Leader Podcast, where we help church leaders teach and model biblical stewardship with confidence, clarity, and conviction. Today's conversation is an important one because we are stepping into a space that most churches have not fully addressed. Not just individual stewardship, but how couples navigate money together. We talk a lot about budgeting here, about generosity and financial discipleship. But for many couples, the real challenge is not knowledge, it's a communication, alignment, and shared decision making. I'm joined today by Diana and Yosuto Shaw, co founders of Opto. They came from strong financial professional backgrounds, but what they are building is not just another financial tool. It's something designed to help couples actually navigate money together in real life. I think it's going to be an incredibly helpful conversation for pastors, stewardship leaders, and anyone discipling couples in their church. Diana, Yosuto, I'm really glad you joined us today. Thank you for coming on Stewardship Leader.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you
We're
so much. We're
excited.
honored to be here.
Well, as an introduction and to help our audience get to know you, please share your background, both professional and personal, and
Mhm.
what motivated you to focus on serving couples and helping them to navigate money beliefs and the differences that they have when it comes to money.
Sure. Do you
Sure,
want to start?
I can start. So I'm Diana. I grew up in Florida, went to college at Harvard for undergrad. And when I went there, I actually really wanted to work on human rights work. And I told the
Mm.
Lord, I was like, let me really help people through like opportunities in nonprofit work and business. And when I graduated, I spent a few years in different business environments at bigger companies like Deloitte and Capital One, and eventually went to business school because I just really felt that draw to entrepreneurship to help people. But to be honest, when I went to business school, I didn't realize we would end up building what we were building today. So we'll talk about it in a second. But I'll let you, Sudo, share as well.
Sure. And yes, Yasuto, from Atlanta. I went to Dartmouth for undergrad where I studied psychology, which would play a role later. But I immediately went into consulting and then worked at Capital One as well. And while we were at Capital One, we both worked on the credit card team. Meanwhile, I was actually in credit card debt, kind of pushing and developing these credit card products. And I think started to realize just how negatively Americans are impacted by a lot of our personal financial
Mhm.
infrastructure. And it's not necessarily that it's nefarious on the part of the credit card companies, but they're not really structured in a way that encourages a responsible use. And so I think we both felt like we were in a little bit of a moral gray area while we were working at Capital One. And that's part of the reason I went to business school was to pivot, to try something different, to find something that I found was more aligned with my values. And so when Diana and I both went to business school in Chicago, I was at Kellogg, she was at Booth. We actually started to realize just how difficult it was to manage money together once we were no longer making a stable income. So we were married already. We had originally had this, pretty stable income. We were doing well. And then we gave that up for grad school and everything just started feeling rockier. We started getting into more arguments about money. And that's when we started saying, well, there's got to be an easier way. So we started working on deciding to build some sort of personal finance app around money to help people manage money better. But we quickly realized that the problem was actually more relational. We actually went to couples counseling, a referral through our church, and we worked with a couples counselor for 6 months, and we learned how to communicate about money so much better. And that was really what made the difference. And that I think really inspired us to figure out how to help other people have that experience, but find a way to do it at scale so that it's not, if you don't have access to a couples counselor or even after the counseling sessions, how can you have those conversations continue to help couples better manage money? Do you want to add anything there, Diana, about the why?
I would say the other part that we didn't realize was that simultaneously after had gone through marriage counseling, we actually went on a retreat around generosity. And I think those two experiences were really important for us because first we were experiencing how important it is to communicate about money. At the same time, we realized when we went on that generosity retreat, we had this realization that it feels so different to cast a vision as a couple together about what money is for. And I think that radically changed the conversation,
Mm,
less about is it more my way or Yusuda's way, and more of saying, what are we building together? And
yeah.
I think that really inspired what we're building today.
Well, I absolutely love that because I think sometimes, especially when a couple comes together, many times we have our own careers, our own paths, and then of course we're building a family. So there's a lot of that going on that pulls us naturally together. But
Right.
we still tend to think of finances as kind of a separate thing because we're making our own money. And
Right.
we kind of have an identity. I know my wife and I have both had different careers and we
Hmm.
supported each other, but we felt like we're on two different tracks. And what brought us together was the family and the time we had together.
Yeah.
But what
Definitely.
someone really challenged us years ago is that our marriage wasn't just about what we did outside the home or what we did in the home, is what God was calling us as a couple to do together. And that there was
Mm,
a ministry component to that. There was an eternal perspective, something that we could only do together. And I think it's
that's
Yeah.
very unique for each couple. I think it's different. And sometimes it even changes with the seasons. So, early on, I know for us, it was like focusing on raising our two daughters. But later on, and now it's beginning to shift. And over time, it's been different expressions of that. So I love that you focus on that you recognize and God's shown you
mm.
that together means something. It's not, well, we do this together because it's just natural. No, no, no. There's a distinct importance that when God puts two people together, he has a plan for those two together to do
Yeah.
something more than just coexist or have children.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about what you shared is that you recognized that this was not a financial literacy issue,
Hmm.
and that at the core, the problem that couples were facing was more than financial. And you said that what made you realize that was that it wasn't just a financial knowledge problem. So, can you expand on that a little bit? Like, what really brought that about to realize that it was a money issue or something deeper?
Yeah.
Definitely. I'll start. I think there are two main things that we realized in working on this space. I think first, actually, as someone who studied economics undergrad and went to Booth for business school, there's always this expression that, like money is not fully rational. And I think the thing that we found is that I think it's not always optimal per se, but people often are making decisions from their life experiences, from narratives they've internalized early on. So I actually think money decisions are more understandable. The problem is a lot of times we don't leave enough time or space to really uncover those deeper experiences, the mental models that we have, the emotions that we've attached to money. And so we found this out because we look at the spreadsheet and we both are big
Hmm.
spreadsheet people and we'd be looking at the same numbers and
Hmm.
have different decisions on what we thought we should do.
Right.
And it really was hard to figure out why we came to different decisions until we spent so much time really unpacking the layers on like where we came from with money, how we
Mm.
communicate about money. First, I'd say I think one problem we realized for us and a lot of people is that there's often not enough space and time to really dig into that deep personal formation that
Hmm.
shapes money. The second way we found that wasn't just a financial literacy gap is the more we talked to other couples on how they felt about money. So,
Mm-hmm.
one of the big things we realized is that a lot of couples didn't want to say that they weren't fully on the same page with money. Only when we started sharing our own struggle did people say, "Oh, me too." Like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that deeply resonates."
Mm.
And I kind of love the picture of an onion because there's so many layers to it. But the other thing I like about the onion is that it's strong. and and when you peel back the layers, there's a lot of depth to that. And a lot of times, when you're chopping up onion, your eyes might water. It's hard. It's actually like a little uncomfortable sometimes to peel
Mhm.
back those layers. But the reframe that we really want to focus on is that the assumption shouldn't be that it's easy to merge two different financial lives together in marriage. The assumption should be you're bringing two people together for a shared financial vision. You're actually making more like 1 + 1 = 4. You're working towards, exactly like you said, Leo, a totally different and
Mm.
better picture than what you can build separately. And that's hard and it's good work, but it's not natural. And so,
Yeah.
what we want to help people understand is this reorientation towards it's actually normal to want to have a lot of support and to dig deeper. It's actually normal for it not to be 100% easy to talk about money with your partner because you're two different people and God brought you together to complement each other.
Mm.
So, for
Mhm.
example, if one person saves more and the other person spends more, together, God can unlock a much better picture because you're both being a wise steward and yet being generous and taking advantage of opportunities that God's bringing that you might not have anticipated. It just takes time. And that process is actually natural because you go through the hard conversations, you can be a better team, not in spite of that.
Mm. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Now, Opto is especially for couples and not for individuals. So I want you to talk about that. But before we get there, why don't you describe a little bit for our audience what is Opto, what is intention, and then answer the question on why is it just for couples, not for individuals?
Great. Yeah, and honestly, this is something we would love to solve for individuals as well, but we really felt like couples kind of resonated with this message a little bit more clearly, and it was kind of a harder problem to solve. So we thought it was the better place to start. So what
Mm,
Opto is it's actually an AI based financial coach for couples to help them dig into their relationship with money and how their partner thinks about money and kind of begin to understand each other better. And then it also then helps them start to make more tactical decisions together and build a plan together. So what why Opto exists for couples, and I'll also talk a little bit about why we decided to use AI. Essentially, as Diana was saying there, what we realized was that a lot of people assume it's a financial literacy problem, but then once you get into a partnership, that's when it kind of clicks for people that there's something strange going on here. I think my opinion is rational, but somehow my partner just has a different opinion. Like what is going on there? And that's when we realized that as we've had this concept that money is emotional, money is relational, couples are the ones who get that the most naturally. And the other thing is also from a missional perspective, we just started to learn that money is one of the leading causes of divorce. And so we decided that that's actually something we want to try to take on and address with this is not only can money really hurt people's relationships with God, hurt their own financial well-being, but also just that covenant relationship is often being hurt by money. So that's something we wanted to take on. And so I mentioned I would briefly talk about why AI, and I just wanted to say that that is from a perspective of really helping people now have those conversations at their own pace and on demand. And so we're just realizing that there's actually a lot of ways we can use this new technology to now
mm,
help couples between counseling sessions or in addition to other services they get. So that's a bit about why it's for couples and a bit about what the product is.
yeah. Well, I think you guys are ahead of the curve, which doesn't surprise me getting to know you and understanding kind of the way you've approached your careers and what you serve and how, your background, all of that kind of leads me to believe and understand why you chose AI. And I
Yeah,
know that it's still a developing technology and not everybody's fully embraced it. And I think there has to be caution with it. But
absolutely.
I do believe, I know it's a part of pretty much every day that I have to work. It's
Yeah,
somehow I'm going to tap into it and I'm going to have the use of AI in order to help me be more productive.
right,
And yeah, I mean, I don't use it for everything, but it is a great tool if you know how to use it. I
right,
love the idea of thinking through this since it's going to be here, how to
right,
find a way to use it to bring people together. Again, a lot of how AI is trained and how it operates is based on things that you can guide it. It's not going to do
right,
something you don't want it to do.
right.
I think it's just of I think it's something that most couples that will eventually get, especially younger couples who are already using technology at ease,
Yeah,
I think they'll
yeah,
be more than likely to embrace this and say, "Hey, I don't
Mhm.
care where the advice is coming from as long as it makes sense and
right,
it accomplishes my goal." And I
right.
think it's a great forward step for you guys to embrace that and move toward that. And my hope is that it'll continue to get better. I think it will. There's a,
Yeah,
there's a lot of people working on making it better and making it useful for our lives.
yeah,
And personally, I love it. So if I love it, I think other people will as well. And I do
yeah.
I do support it. And I think it was a brilliant move for you guys to start thinking that way.
Thanks. Yeah,
I
we
appreciate
appreciate that.
that. Yeah, and I'll just comment really quickly on the security part too. So I think people always ask us, why is this different than if someone just went straight to something like ChatGPT? And I think
Mm,
there are two important things that we do. One is that we have a lot of guidelines on what it will or won't say. So we're very careful on not giving financial advice,
mm,
not making decisions about whether or not you should stay with someone. So just we really orient it around biblical principles of grace, of
mm,
compassion, um, quick to listen. So there are good guardrails. And then the other part is we actually have designed it to turn people towards each other and towards their community in person. So our goal isn't that someone spends as much time as possible with their face in their phone. The goal is to say, after you've had a few conversations with the AI, what can you bring back to a conversation with your partner?
Yeah.
And then as you guys as a team work through things, what can you bring back to a pastor or to a counselor? Because now you have a much better understanding of where can the human component or the human people in your life, where can they really lean in and help you too? So
Yeah.
we're trying to really go back towards the human to human connections at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So you kind of hinted at the fact that obviously couples have different money stories, different backgrounds, savers,
Correct.
spenders, different personalities, all of that. So what does a couple's money story reveal that a budget spreadsheet would not?
Yeah. Yeah. I can share a little bit about this, and we'll actually just do a quick screen share too. So for
Okay,
anyone who's watching on video, and kind of describe it too for anyone who's just listening in.
perfect.
Yeah, so we have a desktop app, and we actually also have a mobile app. So the desktop is available at optotogether.com. The mobile app is currently on the iOS App Store only right now under Opto, Money Coach for Couples. But we are going to get to Android at some point. So what you can see here is we have this journey, and the journey starts with a story. But then, of course, we do actually get into more of a system, more of your playbook. How do you actually manage money together? But the reason we start with a story is exactly as you were asking there. The spreadsheet just tells you the behavior. But what we realize is there's so much behind the behavior that is important to know first. So I'm just going to go actually and look at an archive of a conversation that I was having with Opto. And this was actually real stories that Diana and I shared. So for me, I shared that that my parents basically always found ways to make things work financially, even when money was tight. One example of that was when I needed braces, but it was more cosmetic. Kids were making fun of me in school because I had crooked teeth, and my parents didn't have a lot of money, but they said, you know what? They're gonna make it work. They're gonna find a way, and they did. And I don't know exactly how they did. I know that they had credit card debt over different periods of their lives, but I found that they were able to, bring joy, make ends meet, make things work even while money was tight. And so you can see here, if you're looking at the screen, how I kind of have this conversation where the AI tool, where Opto is kind of unpacking that for me, and even learning some of the negatives of maybe they were too comfortable with credit card debt, and that's something that I should reflect on, that I don't actually want to carry forward, versus the positives, where I do like how they really did a good job showing me to just bring joy. Now, then you see that there's a bit of a summary that it shows about my money history and the beliefs that I absorbed. Then Diana, on her side, she kind of shares that her parents were really, really careful with saving, with using deals, using coupons, and being careful about how they stewarded their money. And to her, that was a really important mindset that she absorbed of you should save, you should prepare ahead. Now, what we found then was I like to spend more. She liked to save more. That was what was on the surface. But when you dig a little deeper, then we have a session now where we could go into it together, where you can dig a little deeper. You're sharing these stories with each other, and now you're having a common conversation where you see, okay, it's really about the joy that we're trying to bring. I grew up really focusing on joy in the present. Diana's family grew up thinking about joy for the future. How can we bring those two ideas together? And then how can we actually now honor each other? Like Diana was saying, let's leverage the joy that I bring so that she's having fun in the moment. We're going on vacations when we can afford it. We don't always just save up for the future. But then I can appreciate her stewardship. We're not in credit card debt. We're making sure that we are preparing for future children. So basically that story is really a way to help bring alignment. And then once a couple's in alignment, that's when you can start saying, okay, well, what is our dream for the future? What is the system for how we're going to manage money? And that's why we think that the story is so important before you even get to the spreadsheet.
Yeah, that kind of brings me back to my wife and I's journey with our finances. And I put a budget together. I've shared this with our community before, that I put a budget together, and like Moses coming down from the mountain with the 10 Commandments, I said, we
Yeah.
will live thusly from now on.
Right.
And she just laughed and walked away because she's like, I'm not doing that. And I just think, like, what benefit people may have today by having, whether it's AI or a leader or someone that's coaching them, or all the
Yeah.
tools combined in some way, to help
Right.
them to not start with the argument, not start
Right.
with the numbers, which always bring the stress of well, you like things this way and I like things this way. And you mentioned that this balance you're trying to strike between having joy today, but also not forfeiting on the joy tomorrow. And I
Right.
remember my wife made this statement that just kind of stuck with me. She said, Leo, I'm just like you. I want to have a guaranteed as much as possible future.
Hmm.
I just don't want our girls to be married and off before we have any kind of memories and experiences. Like
Mm,
we can't just stay and have
yeah.
no life. She's like, I want to have a life while we also are cautious about the future.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
helped me to realize, like, I don't have
Mm,
to win with money. Like, I
Mhm.
don't have to, like, set
mhm,
a goal and, like, beat everybody because I save more than everybody at my age or some stupid thing like that,
Right.
which is what I was doing. I was trying to
Yeah.
prove to everybody how brilliant I was, but
Yeah.
I would have sacrificed our family in the process. And so
mm,
I love that this app and what you guys are building is allowing this to unfold in a way that's healthier, that
Yeah.
mhm,
brings the real conversation and anchors it in a way that allows couples to say, I understand now. I understand you. I understand where you're coming from. Let's move forward together. Absolutely love that. I think this app can certainly do that because the approach is similar to what we try to do when we're counseling or coaching people is to
Mhm.
say, let's find out what you want to do. What did you experience and what's your money story? So we do
Yeah.
mm,
the same thing. This just allows couples to do it more easier, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
download an app and you fill out some information. So I
Right.
love the simplicity of it and what potential it has.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thanks for
Definitely.
sharing that personal story too. Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what that is, we've heard so many similar stories, right? The saver spender dynamic is so common. Sometimes you do
Mm.
have two savers, sometimes you do have two spenders, but it's almost like that's where opposites attract for a lot of people. And
Yep.
you have to value that, right? Not let that
Mhm,
create too much tension, but actually let it complement each other. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's easy for it to become a point of tension when there's
It
not
is.
a common way to move forward, right? If there's not some kind of coaching or some kind of process that you
Right.
can engage with together so that you have that knowledge and that wisdom. All
Yeah.
right. So how does Opto fit into what churches and stewardship leaders are already doing? And are you replacing anything or adding to it?
Great question. We are absolutely adding to what already exists. So there are a lot of great resources out there. Christian Stewardship Network, a lot of other resources that are working on stewardship and generosity in churches specifically. What we would love to do is become that ongoing 24/7 companion that helps fill the gaps in between any in person coaching or content sessions. So, for example, if there's a couple who goes to a pastor and says, "Hey, we're getting married soon. I'd love to do premarital counseling." Amazing. That's such a great time.
Mm.
We would love for this to be something that the pastor could refer to the couple and say, we'll talk about these topics, we'll talk about money, but we don't have enough time realistically to unpack and work through all the all the
Mhm.
they take years, and it's an ongoing process. So we would love for this to be something that pastors and ministry leaders can recommend to couples that they work with or people who are dating and getting engaged or even married and want to go deeper in their relationship. And again, we hope that this points people back towards how do we come back in community and keep building in conversations because we almost view ourselves like the foot in the door and
Mhm.
saying money can be really hard to talk about for most people. Whether it's about giving to your church, it's about money between a couple. It's a very taboo topic still in our society today. If people can start to practice, even in short 5-10 minute conversations outside in the privacy of their home, in the privacy with a friend, we hope that that can actually spur people on to say, how much easier will it be to then feel comfortable sharing in a small group, sharing with your pastors,
Mm.
and just having more healthy conversations more broadly. So we would
Mm.
love for the complement all of the work that exists today, content that's out there, just to make it more accessible, and then to turn people back towards community and back towards each other and just make money, put it in its place where it's just a tool, again, that God has given us to bring his kingdom here on earth.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you made this distinction that you want them to be pointed back into the community. And the app is built that way. It's not built for you to go find something to about money and how you're going to manage it and then
Right.
make sure that your wife or your husband agrees with it. No, it's about bringing them together, but really it's pointing people back to community. And that's what our
Mm,
stewardship leaders and church really desire to do. We know that people learn and grow in community. They don't learn individually or grow individually. You can study on your own, but it's when you process all of that out loud with someone else, with a group of people that really refines your beliefs, refines what you truly are willing to like stake your life on. And
Yeah.
this is
yeah.
one of those things that can be pointed. or tool that can be used so that it points people to that community to continue to grow. Because again, it's not done in isolation. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you making the distinction.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And one quick story I'll share. We were talking to someone recently, actually more about the generosity topic. And he said to us, he said, I will talk about anything with my small group except for money. That's the one
Mhm.
thing that's still something that I think the church is working towards. But if we can start to feel more comfortable, again, because a lot of what our app is trying to do is build that understanding. And so, not to say, hey, you're broken because you think XYZ. No, like there's a redeeming part that God says, like, is that some of this makes sense. You might be living this way or feeling this way. You can still choose healthier habits and how healthier relationship with money. And again, you can do that in community. So we kind of view this as equipping people with the language to say, how do you feel more comfortable going to people and sharing this? Because it actually makes sense. And a lot of the behaviors we live out make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we shouldn't change some of the behaviors that we have, but it's okay. And we'll work with you in that. And you're not alone in that.
Yeah, that's great. It's only in church that talking about money is weird. Everywhere else, it's normal.
You know?
So I don't understand that. It's the weirdest thing. So
Yeah.
you've done some multiple life coaching. I know you've done that. You've done sessions. What surprises couples most when they start having these conversations?
I'll give two things and I'll see if Sue wants to jump in. I think first, couples are always surprised that they very quickly learn things about their partner, even if they've been together for years. Just the
Yeah.
space to start to understand stories.
Mm.
It's normally within the first 10, 15 minutes, I hear a couple say, I never knew, they look at each other like, I never knew that, or I never heard that story before. So I think couples might assume that when you spend a lot of time together, you know each other fully. And there's just always more to learn about your partner. So I think people are surprised that they get that delight moment of like, I'm I'm drawn to you because I have this new understanding of you, this new story of you. The second thing is I would say couples often drastically underestimate how much they have in common. So even
Mhm.
if behaviors play out differently, there's actually often a shared sense, not only of values, but of maybe fears that they have or childhood experiences that they're playing out. It's easy for couples to say, well, one partner's really good with the spreadsheet, the other one has nothing to do with it. And I've heard couples say we actually both feel inadequate sometimes in how we are
Mm.
handling this. And there, we start, couples can easily play out assumptions about how their partner feels and not realize that their partner might be facing similar fears, similar questions, similar uncertainties. And and they actually can bond over that sense of we don't have it figured out, but we can figure it out together. And I think couples really find that closeness and the similarities more surprising.
Yeah.
Anything you'd ask?
Yeah, actually, I'll add a little bit of more of a tactical note, which
Mhm.
is just that one thing that we've been emphasizing is that having that live human connection is really important as well. And actually, in our app, we have a way for people to request a live coaching session too. So
Mm.
you can go
Very cool.
through, have those AI coaching sessions. But if you do feel like you want to go deeper or you would love to bring a human in the loop, there's a way to request that. And that's something that you would pay for kind of separately, but that is something that's an option. And then, of course, if you have that access in your church or somewhere in your network, we want people to go with their
Mhm.
community first, but we do
Absolutely.
offer that too.
Yeah. It's great. I love that because not everything can be necessarily solved. You hope that the conversation, the stories that are shared creates that bond that you're looking for and that they can proceed. But
Yeah.
sometimes there's wounds, there's trauma, there's all kinds of things that come to the table. And sometimes,
Right.
honestly, there's just addictions around money. No matter how
Yeah.
good the advice is, sometimes you just need a human being
Yeah.
to walk you through that. In
Yeah.
fact, we have a podcast coming up with someone that deals with that kind of situation.
Oh,
Be up out in a few weeks. Someone I met recently that literally meets with people and helps them understand how to
Mm.
overcome these money scripts and money
yeah.
addictions that they have. And it's not that every addiction is leading to a financial
Mhm.
downfall, but it's
Right.
it's, it's just how they manage money and it's unhealthy and it's keeps them from being fulfilled or full of joy, and they just kind of go through life and money is the anchor that's kind of they're dragging along, and they don't
Yeah.
understand why. But all of that comes from our background and what we've faced in life and what we've been exposed to. So
Yeah.
I love that there is that opportunity for people to connect with a coach or someone that they can kind of walk through some of those difficult situations.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Now,
That's great.
one of the things that you guys shared with me is that you're both certified prepare, enrich, premarital counseling facilitators. I got excited when you said this could be used for pre-marriage counseling because I remember being a pastor for many years and having some of that as a responsibility and thinking, to do this well, I'm going to need like months with this couple. I remember one time someone asked me, another pastor was going out of town, was like, can you marry this couple? They've done some premarital counseling, but they're not complete. Can you? And I thought, you're asking me to like put a stamp of approval for a couple and marry them, and I have no idea if they're even compatible. Like
Right.
this is the worst scenario. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think most pastors feel that like,
Yeah.
how do I make sure they have the proper conversations about everything? And
Yeah.
me being financially kind of called to that, that's the
Yeah.
one thing I think I know what improper communication about finances will bring into your marriage. I've experienced it.
Yeah.
I don't want that for
Yeah.
anyone.
Right.
So
Right.
that training that you've had obviously has equipped you to kind of look things in a unique way. So how did that training reshape and help you to think about how you're building Opto?
Yeah, I can start
Go
actually a bit
ahead.
on this one. So one other thing to note is we actually are both in the process of becoming ordained associate pastors in our church.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, we go to a small non-denominational church out here in San Francisco, and we've been undergoing the process of doing premarital counseling for couples now, and as mentioned, have been trained under the Prepare and Enrich model. And we went through Prepare and Enrich 7 years ago, before we were actually right before we got engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, maybe 8 years ago. And and what we found, I think the two big things that we've kind of carried into this app. One was really that idea of understanding your family backgrounds. I think like we talked about that for years afterward of just the idea that the Prepare and Enrich model had us sit down and think through what about your family background is bringing unspoken assumptions about how a marriage should look like that maybe your partner has a different assumption. And then what we do, of course, is we double click on that. We dive deeper when it comes to finances. But then the second piece was actually looking at personality differences and then viewing those as strengths and viewing those as compliments. And so we think that there's a lot of richness in premarital counseling already, premarital counseling courses and materials and things like Prepare and Rich. But one of the things we've talked to other pastors about is, but you can't get through everything, in the
Yeah.
richness and the depth that you want, right? And that's where especially, we're diving into one topic and, there's probably room for a lot of other solutions around others too. But that idea that it brings up finances, but then, our hope is to kind of partner after that and then say, okay, now let's go a little deeper on finances, once you finish Prepare and Rich, for example. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've learned about stewardship ministry and teaching
Yeah.
people about finances, and
Yeah.
many times when we talk about stewardship in the church, and many people will say, well, stewardship isn't just money. And I 100%
Mm.
agree with that
Yeah.
statement.
Yeah.
However, money is a major topic in people's lives. It
Yes.
consumes people every day and they manage it every day. So
Yes.
starting there is a good starting point because it's a pain point for most people. And if
Yeah.
they can understand how to steward, how to manage what God's entrusted to them, and how to become wise about those principles that they need to implement as they manage their money, then it
Yeah.
could easily translate over to how you manage your time, how you manage your
Right.
career, your relationships, other things. It doesn't equip you directly how to manage those things, but it's a much easier lift to go
Yeah.
there once you already understand how to do it in one area. But like what you shared about pre-marriage ministry and
Yeah.
premarital counseling is that if you attack the money, which again, 50% of couples divorce because of money fights or
Yeah.
money
Right.
stress. If you can address that, you're putting them on a much better path to be able then to communicate about other areas that they need to communicate with and they need to settle before they say I do. But I think it's
Yeah.
a great step to get them there.
Definitely. And on the point, but we always say the unique part about money, especially, is it's the most visible and limited resource where it can feel easily zero sum. So it's really incredible training ground for couples to learn
Yeah.
how to work together and make compromise. Like,
Compromise. Yeah.
another way, if we both want to be more peaceful, we could do that and hopefully not bother each other. But if you still want to spend more, I want to save more, that's going to um, butt up against each other. So it's something where, exactly to your point, Leo, it's an incredible access point to how
Hmm.
couples can work together as a team too. And it's so important to do. And you're right
Yeah.
that we've studies will show people will take years to ask for help around money.
Hmm.
So if we can get this to people before they get married, it's just laying the groundwork for years of conversations. And I know you had Matt Bell on the podcast last year, and he talked about financial transparency. And I think that actually the feeling of hiding anything around finances, we feel like is the downstream symptom that shows up when couples don't have enough early practice on communicating around money. And the silence or secrecy isn't a choice. It's inevitable pattern that couples might fall into. So we couldn't agree more. The earlier couples can get this in their hands, and the better that they are to be, and the better they can communicate over hopefully a lifetime of marriage together.
Yeah.
I agree. What does it mean for a couple to have a shared money framework, and why does it matter beyond just agreeing on a budget?
I'll start and then I'll let you Sue jump in. One of the things we found is that very rarely do couples actually have a written, concise framework for how they think about life. And to your point, Leo, especially money and what stewardship is like. And one reason that can be so helpful is that on the surface, couples often maybe like agree in loose terms, but the devil's in the details in a way in this. Maybe there's a flip from a spiritual side, like God's in the details. Example is that you and I, when we got married, we said we both really value family as one thing. But how that plays out with money is different. I might want to save for a future family, and Yosuto might be more willing to spend money today to go visit family because it's family. So same value of really cherishing, protecting and providing and showing up for family shows up differently when it comes to money decisions.
Yeah.
And so what we found is that having a shared money framework bridges the gap between the values and the life we want to live out and the tactical like decision-making frameworks. Too often we see couples try to work through a lot of money conversations in the heat of the moment. So let's say a person loses their job or family asks for money. All of a sudden you're trying to decide, how do we as a household approach this, or like what's our perspective on this in a time pressured specific context. And that's when a lot of stress and a lot of emotions and hurt can be done. So to have a framework and a shared language to say, hey, we're coming back to this on the same team. We're coming back to principles we thought about before the heat of the moment, before we're, in these crisis moments, or before there's a lot of pressure. We've had time to get that alignment. It doesn't mean it will be easy, but it does give you one thing to point back to instead of a tug of war of like, well, is it my way or is it your way? And that's something that couples have never gotten to have often written out in that kind of clarity.
Yeah. Nothing to add.
Well, I think of it as like the playbook. As long as you have a playbook, just come back and play the same plays, right? You can activate rather than just trying to every time kind of start over. And what I found is my wife and I would argue about money when it came to arguing about money is that like we had this kind of the same ideals, even though we were on separate pages. I would say, you always do this. And she would say, you always do that. And it was just unfruitful because we had no shared language. We had no platform or framework for how are we going to do this in a healthy way rather than just express frustration without really any help to us moving forward together.
Yeah.
So I think what you just shared is so crucial for people to understand is that framework is what allows couples to not just get better in the moment, but continue to stay healthy and get healthier over time.
Right.
Because the last thing you want is for someone to feel like, okay, I got fixed up. I think we're okay. But next time we face this, what do we do? Do they call the counselor again and they have another session? We want to equip couples as we're discipling them in this area to be able to manage things going forward, not to, kind of repeat the same cycle. And I think that platform and that framework is hugely important for them to be able to do that. So
Definitely. And the last thing I actually add really quickly to that is a lot of when we talk about our app, I think people quickly get that we want to protect relationships, like we want to repair relationships through the money conversation. What you're saying too is we actually also want to unlock what couples are like want to build towards. And so I think with that, Leo, to your point, not only do you have this playbook, but the best part about playing is like, playing a sport where you have a playbook is it's something you love doing. You know what you're working towards at that ultimate goal. And a lot of times couples, I think, feel like money is just this like, oh, we just have to barely get by. Like, no, you have that, you love this. This is your life you're going to build. The playbook is the callings that you have. And it can unlock things like generosity. It can unlock a greater sense of purpose or doing the dream job you want to have or all these things. So I love to use a sports analogy because we don't often have that joy or that sense of excitement or expectation around money. A lot of times people are like, ooh, I barely have to get through the money conversation.
Yeah.
And so I like that sports analogy because when you talk to athletes, they're like, we love this game. Like we are here to win. We know what we're working towards. And I want couples to have that shared passion of like, about the athletes have. Like, yeah, like we know what we're going to do. We know what winning looks like. And we are on the same team and we are going after it.
Yeah.
I grew up playing sports in case you can't tell.
I was just going to say, you're right. I think that is one downside or one gap in budgeting apps, right? You're just trying to make sure you spend less than you make, right? But in this, what we feel like is really more important is that you're building something together. Your playbook should be, what are you building together? How are you going to get there? How do you get through those challenges that come up? Having that real plan and that alignment is what's important.
Yeah. Plus, you're addressing the objections before the numbers start to make it look like there's no hope, right? You're
Yeah.
addressing those early on. So when they do have the money conversation, it's within this context of we have goals, we're moving together toward a shared benefit, right?
Yeah.
And when they look at the numbers and they're like, we need to cut back on this and that, it doesn't feel like we're giving up our life. Like, no, we're going somewhere and this is just part of the process.
Right.
It's always hard for me when I'm coaching someone because I don't have as much time, especially if I'm doing it through a class,
Yeah.
is because I'm laying down some very practical and biblical principles, but I don't have the time to invest in trying to really help them understand that the numbers tell a bigger story and the numbers are a way to formulate your own story of where you want to go to create those goals that are mutually shared and mutually agreed upon and like excited about so that they can truly have fun. And one of the things that I always tell couples, because they usually come to us with a lot of financial strain, as you probably imagine, a lot of debt that they can handle, student loans, all kinds of things. And so I always say, look, life is meant to be enjoyed. So if you think this budgeting is about giving up on joy, that's not what this is about. But right now, you're not having joy because your money is controlling you and you're like completely in control. What we want to do is give you the tools to have control, to make decisions that you decide are important and a priority to you. But don't forget to have fun. Don't forget to enjoy life. Like have something in your budget that says, we're going to do something fun while we're saving for the future, while we're providing for the kids, while we're doing all the other things and paying down debt. But we're not going to stop living. And I think that's what I love about the framework you guys are building is that you're helping couples to have language around that agreement before you even introduce the actual numbers that could potentially explode the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Great.
Exactly.
I think that's great. And we were just saying, I think, was it somewhere in First Thessalonians 5, I think they talk about wealth being for like the enjoyment too, as well.
I think it's Second
It's
Timothy.
like okay. Wasn't studied hard enough. But the wealth, like it's a resource for God that God gave us to delight and to enjoy too. And a lot of times we miss that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the financial stewardship ministry has been relegated as to be the fun suckers in the church.
Right.
It's such a mischaracterization of who we really are. But we have to battle through it because we know in the end it does benefit and couples individuals do benefit. So, well, as we kind of close this out, I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to the stewardship leader that's listening.
Yeah.
What's one thing they can do this week to better address what couples are really facing and better address the couple's dynamic really as they minister to them as they go through, whether it's premarital counseling or classes where they're facing them or even one-on-one coaching? What would you suggest?
I'll give a few very practical things. I think first, this might be counterintuitive, but for the stewardship leaders, the ministry leaders, pastors, you're doing amazing work. I would not skip over that you get to model this first. So you get to invest in your own relationship first. So this could be helpful to you first. And then you just get to love on people out of that shared alignment with your partner. We hope you use this first for yourself because I think we lead out of the place of groundedness. So as you're listening, don't just think about the people you're serving. Also make room for you to love and care for yourself. So use it yourself. And then I think for couples, of course, you can recommend people check out the app. But more than anything, that reframe, I think, of saying you're not failing as a couple because you don't see eye to eye. You get to complement each other and love each other and build a better unit together. There's actually probably way more you get to unpack and learn about each other as a couple by exploring that. So don't miss that. Don't rush past that. don't overlook that space is probably the next space to go deeper as a couple and to love each other deeper.
Yeah.
So just that invitation can normalize it for a lot of couples who probably are afraid to ask for help or afraid to feel shame if they are admitting that they don't see 100% eye to eye, even though
Mm.
that's actually probably the exact reason that God brought you together too. So experience it yourself and also just normalize this conversation for couples and say, the last thing I'll say is that one of the most transformative things for me is one of my friends in business school said, since the day that her and her husband got married, they started going to marriage counseling. And she said, I would work out to stay healthy so I don't show up in the hospital. And she says, we go to marriage counseling to stay healthy in our relationship so we don't end up in divorce court. And I'd make the equivalent of help people view this as an investment of even if things aren't falling apart, it doesn't mean you can't do things to just get healthier and
Mhm.
healthier
Mhm.
and to just keep
Mhm.
investing in your relationship. So just encourage people to say, even if you don't feel like the house is burning down from arguments around money, you can probably always grow closer. So just look at it as a positive investment.
Yeah. And I'll
Yeah.
just say one more super tactical, what you can do this week. One more thing on that is just sit down with this question of what is your earliest memory around
Mhm.
money with your family? And then what lessons did you learn from that? And then if you are married, speaking to the stewardship leaders, ask your spouse the same thing and just see what that unlocks. And I would say if you are counseling couples, ask them that question too, and then see what that unlocks. That we've just found that has just created the richest conversations for people.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such a helpful conversation because it highlights something that all of us here believe, which is that, this isn't really about finances alone. This addresses much more than stewardship. It addresses really deeper relational conversations and the unity and marriage that we all desire. So I'm very grateful for you guys, our stewardship leaders. If they're interested in learning more, please take a minute and just let them know where they can go. We'll also put that in the show notes, but I'd love for you guys to share that.
Yes, we would love, love, love to connect with you. You can reach us at joinopto.ai, which is our website. And then our email is contact@optofinancial.com. Opto is OPTO. And yes, reach out. We would love to get feedback, love support. And like you said, Leo, when you asked the question of where we fit in this picture, we would love to partner with people as well. So
Mhm.
if you have ideas on ways we could work together, we would love to do that. I think this is the biggest opportunity. And there's actually way more urgency in solving this problem than I think we realize. So we'd love to just team up with you and support you in your own ministry and communities too. So please reach out
Yeah.
and let us know how we can help you.
If you want to try out the app, it's available on the Apple App Store at Opto Money Coach for Couples. That's what it's called there. So hope you get a chance to check it out yourself.
Well, thank you guys. I so appreciate everything you shared. This is such a revolutionary way to help couples. So I'm grateful that you guys have the background you have, that God's brought you to this place to start thinking more creatively how to help couples, people in our churches that really do need both the biblical and the practical, but they
Yeah.
need to do it together.
Yeah.
Couples need to understand this together. And it is one of the probably greatest challenges we have when we're counseling or coaching or even teaching couples this is to get them to really come together. In a
Yeah.
class that I do, I don't have time to address those things, right? I hope that they already have an agreement to do this together. And that's
Right.
assuming a lot, right? Because most of us are so different, as all of us know. But I so
Yeah.
appreciate that you guys are intuitive and inventive in the way you've come to this to try to
Yeah.
find some solutions that frankly are there and that could really benefit. So, and also love the idea of partnering with you guys. I would love to ask you to come back if you would to
Sure.
continue to have a deeper conversation as you're developing the app more, as you're learning more, as you're seeing its uses and the varying ways that you'll be using it. And just continue to educate our community because we are always looking for good resources that can help us do what we're called to do, which is to minister to couples and individuals in churches and really help them become everything God had intended for them to be. And
Yeah.
money, anytime to get in the way of that, we want to solve that issue and help them move forward in a healthy way. So, would you come back?
Oh, we would love to.
We'll think about it. Yeah, of course.
Okay, I got you on record. You will come back. Appreciate it. All right. Well, Diana and Yosuto, thank you so much for the work you're doing and for sharing it with us today. I am so grateful.
Thank you, Leo.
Leo.
So
Yeah.
grateful for you too. And for everyone listening, also thank you for the work that you're doing. It all matters. And I think a lot of ministry leaders and stewardship pastors don't get to see or appreciate how much they matter to. So thank you to all the listeners as well for
Yeah.
doing the day-to-day hard work.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All
And for those
right.
listening, if you would like to connect with Diana and Yosuto and learn more about Opto and how it might serve couples in your church, we'll include links and resources in the show notes. And as always, if you're part of the CSN community, we want to continue helping you think about stewardship as discipleship, not just financially, but spiritually and relationally. If you're not part of CSN, we would love to invite you to join us and take advantage of the training, resources, and community designed to help you build a culture of stewardship and generosity in your church. You can become a member by going to membership.christianstewardshipnetwork.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Stewardship Leader.